During the start of the restoration, Bill Whittington and I spent some time together and talked about this car and other cars that he and his brothers had raced. And he obviously gave me a lot of insight into this car, his history behind it and with it. And we spoke a lot about just the car itself and what it meant to him. And one of the last things that he and I talked about a few days before his final flight is that the one thing he really wanted to do is he wanted to go to the racetrack, the private racetrack that we belong to, and just to have some laps in the car and just relive the days of driving this car on the track. That was the one thing he really wanted to do. And I really feel after being at the track and shaking this car down and driving it myself, that it's the only thing I regret not being able to do with him was just kind of fulfill that little experience with him in the car, because I could tell how passionate he was about these cars, racing the cars, driving the cars, what it meant to him. And it was a only missed opportunity, I feel, that we did related to this car. Yeah, that's too bad. Here at PATRICK Motorsports, we've been here about 33 years in business. It's all I've ever done. It's the only job I've ever really had. It's my passion. I'm lucky to be in this industry. So this 935 came to us after being in long-term storage. It was very dusty, kind of a barn find wrapped up. It was very complete, but it had been, raced heavily those years from 78 to 1980 and then put away. And so it came to us complete, a lot of the original parts of the car, but just tattered and kind of beat up. So we were able to really kind of go through the anthropology, if you will, breaking down the history of the car and seeing what it had gone through, where the damage was, what parts were great, what parts were just worn out, what parts were just timed out. So rebuilding systems in the car like the fuel system or the air jacks, going through the engine, going through the transmission, looking and checking all the gear ratios, checking all the cam timing, checking the rocker arms, the camshafts, the rod bearings, just all the parts of the engine internally, all the wheel bearings, all the brakes, the rotors, the brakes were smoked, as you well can imagine. We replaced the rotors, found those. We had to source those in England that are remade. We had to source, the specific brake pads used on these big, huge 935, 917 calipers. There were a lot of components that had to be sourced out. It took a lot of time to do that. But it's part of the fun of the chase is going through and determining who makes and who remakes some of the components. We had to redesign and make some of the components that were bad or broken that are not available anymore. So we had to recreate those. And luckily, we have a design team and machine shop here with, CNC machines, both lathe, mill, and 5-axis, that we were able to recreate a lot of the components that were needed that we didn't have. And then basically just taking the time to really go through every detail in the car and make sure everything was right, make sure everything worked correctly, make sure the wiring was correct. And I have to say the guys in my team here have just done a fantastic job. The car starts and runs perfectly. We've run it on our dyno here. We've tuned it. We just took it to the track and ran it and had a great time, great weekend. It was really a kind of a wow moment for my team here. It was really great. I had a great experience. This car's a 78. In 77, I was 12 years old playing Little League Baseball at Kiva Kaibab on Camelback Road, my point is, I was 12 years old. So that's maybe not even for me at my age now today. Maybe if I said, in 1978, I was 13 years old and these cars were racing at Daytona and these guys were, already my heroes of speed, and amongst all the racers of the day, the Whittington Brothers were famous, made their place in the sport. They raced at Indianapolis. They raced at, the big tracks around the world, and they won Le Mans in 1979. This is one of their personal cars that they bought new. They raced it. The car came to us out of, mothballs storage, and we resurrected it back to the glory days that was used, or how it was raced back in 1978 by the brothers. This car has a lot of famous, wins and places in different events around the U.S. had a great history in racing, was never totaled or demolished, and it was kept with most of the original parts it came with from the factory. When we took the car apart, we saw a lot of historical data and could tell that a lot of the parts were the original parts. They were engraved and marked for this number 94 car. There were 3 cars. It was 93 car, 94 car, number 95 car for the 3 brothers, Dale, Bill, and Don. And this car, mainly Bill and Don raced primarily. And as I said, won quite a few races, and as well as placed in many events around the country that they raced it in. It raced for primarily 3 years, from 78, 79, and 80 from our records. This car is the serial number 00023, 23rd 935 produced by Porsche in 1978. And really great opportunity for myself and the team here to do the restoration and be responsible for bringing it back to life in a kind of true, authentic fashion. We spent a lot of time researching the photographs and data of racing photographs that we could find, as well as history, but amongst other racers. And Bill actually shared some of the information that he had on the car and his experience with the car personally up until the time he died, unfortunately. But it was quite an experience to be talking with him about this car and other cars and his experiences with the 935s and 934s and racing in general in IMSA in the day. The restoration was pretty smooth. It was just time consuming. The chassis was slightly damaged in a few areas, a little bit bent. We straightened the car out a little bit. It had a few little incidents and damage in the metal that needed to be repaired and straightened out. The bodywork was primarily original, but again, the fiberglass, trying to keep all the original parts that came with the car to us, which we did. And, every single part is our parts that came with the car when we got it. So the hood, the doors, the fenders, the quarter panels, the front nose, the rockers, all those pieces, including the wing, are parts that were with the car when it came to us for the restoration. So we just had a lot of time-consuming effort into rebuilding the fiberglass, filling a lot of holes from different drilling and fitments that had been done over the years, including driving lights or headlights for the hood for endurance racing that they put on. There were basically shotgun holes of screws and bolts that they had bolted parts on the car over the years to reinforce the rear wing. They had stabilizers that they put on it. They also had little kind of wickers that they had on the rear tail as well as the rear quarter panels to try to get a little bit more downforce and get some more stability. We removed all those and brought it back to the photographs and the data that we had from the original kind of racing first year or so that they did run the car. I did also do some research and met with some members of the racing team originally in West Palm Beach and got photographs and original data on this car specifically from one of the original crew members. And that was really valuable to see what the car looked like in the day when they raced it, and basically see the original configuration and how they were just trackside, always in the grass or the gravel, working on the car. It wasn't like today at the races. It was really more homegrown racing back in the day. The total restoration was about 2.5 years, pretty consistent, but not fully consuming us. We have a team of 18 technicians here, and so it was an ongoing project. It just took time because we really could give it so much effort, but not, all hands on deck on one project like this. Definitely thousands of hours of labor into this car, both the chassis restoration, the body restoration, obviously the paint, the striping, rebuilding every component from the air jacks to the shocks, the brakes, the rotors, calipers, engine, transmission, basically rebuilding every component on the car, fuel pumps, fuel tank, the fuel cell and the fuel bladder, fuel housing, all the gauges, recovering the seat and upholstery in the correct product, as well as going through and having the rear Lexan windows remade by an aircraft company in California that builds the Lexan windows for these cars. But just very time-consuming and tedious details. We just had all the striping all hand painted. I should say lettering. The striping we painted here in the paint shop, but all the lettering is all hand painted by a local artist. That was very consuming and very time consuming to get that done too. But it turned out fantastic. Again, based on a lot of pictures that we really deciphered what the shaping and the styles should be, because this car over the years in racing was painted a few times. It was damaged and one quarter panel was torn off on the right rear side when it was racing up in Portland at one point. So they repainted the cars quickly and down and dirty to get the car back on the track for the next race. We went through all those photographs to try to find the most authentic look of the car. And while stripping the car back down, we could see all of the black and red stripes on the rear quarter panels under the multi-layers of paint, Bondo, and repair. Primarily, most of the parts of the car are original to the car as we received it. Some of the pieces had to be remade. The front oil cooler we remade here in-house. The water coolers and the quarter panels were remade. The water pipes and lines down the side of the car had to be remade because a lot of times when these cars would sit with water in the coolers, they would freeze and split the pipes, and it's kind of the water lines would get kind of stretched out and cracked. So that was found common on these cars, and we did remake all the water lines, water coolers, and as I said, the front oil cooler. Boy, most of the parts really were in great shape and in nice enough shape to be rebuilt or replaced as needed just by copying them. We did remake some pieces in our design studio, and then we CNC machined some sway bar or drop link brakes or brackets that were broken, as well as the brake fittings, kind of some T-fittings that were split that had to be remade. We just engineered those, designed them, and then remade them in our machine shop here in-house. We also used factory 935 race manuals to go through and inspect setup, inspect, ride height, timing, fuel pressures, things that were supposed to be set by the factory and or used by the race teams that raced these cars back in the day upon delivery on how to set them up. We were pretty surprised that most of the numbers really equated to current setup, and we got the car right on the money when we were able to put it back together. The car weighed dry 2,305 pounds, which is pretty light for a big turbo car like this. That was without driver and without a full load of fuel, but the car really is pretty impressive as it was built by Porsche in 1978. This was quite a race car. The reason this car is so special is one, most recently I was introduced to Bill Whittington, who raced the car, and he was quite an interesting man. He was super passionate about these cars and racing them and his experience with the cars and being a racer himself. And this car was really complete. It was a car kind of in my dreams, or a car that I'd seen in magazines and books and photographs over many years. And it's great to be a part of the history of these cars and be involved in the restoration process, and not to own them, but just to be involved in the history. And I feel like the team here with me resurrected this car to bring it back to kind of its glory and the look and style that it was originally raced at in 1978. And that to me is really the benefit of being in this industry. The Porsche industry is fantastic. Worldwide, we've restored other classic Porsche cars, 904s, 906s, 934s, 930 Group B cars, RSRs, RSs. This car is one of the pinnacle cars in my life and my history in the industry. And also being able to take it out on the track and shake it down was really kind of a moment for me in my life, because it was my first experience being able to drive a car that was raced by the Whittington Brothers and had won races across the country and had the kind of history that it does. It's a really, great moment for me in my life as well. The feeling in driving this car gives me goosebumps, because I have to tell you, I drove it at 4/10, 5/10, and maybe 7 or 8/10, in anger on the track. And it's an intense car. To think of these guys driving them for hours on end and surviving that physically and mentally, and just the concept that at any moment a tire failure or another car on the track could take you out or kill you, it's amazing these guys survived. I mean, they were renegades, and they had a lot of balls to race these cars back in the day. And I think that, in the little bit I drove the car, it was exciting, and I mean, kind of the ultimate time in my life in racing. I wasn't racing the car; I was just tracking the car, but it gave me the feeling of kind of going back in time and seeing what these guys were really up against when they were driving these cars. They were a handful. They were really powerful, really fast, and you had to spool them up and run the big RPMs. And once you got going in this car, second, third, fourth gear, it's an amazing feeling. I also think back to the fact that in 1978, I was 13 years old, and so it's hard to imagine what it was like for these guys back in the 70s, and racing these cars, the technology that was in front of them, the safety that they had, which was limited, and the fact that they survived it. It's pretty outstanding. I mean, it's pretty amazing that they made it to this point in life. This car this is like hanging onto a rocket and really being, like needing to keep full concentration and really keep a tight grip on the wheel. And you've got to have some faith in the car and faith in yourself that you're going to make it through the next corner and down the straightaways and in the braking zones. So, yeah, this car is an e-ticket ride. I mean, this thing is amazing. And I have to tell you, I think I would have to really get in shape to be able to drive this car for any type of an endurance race, because it took a lot out of my, mental concentration and physical concentration to drive the car and keep it on the track, and just be thinking about the next corner and what was going to happen next. And it did go through my mind a few times that if anything fails or breaks on the car, what am I going to do? How am I going to hang on to this? What'll happen? Because I would have cried literally if I damaged the car. My whole role in this is to bring it back to its state that you see behind me and, basically deliver it perfect. And I think my team and myself have done a great job at that. I'm really proud of my guys here and the team at PATRICK Motorsports to be able to do that.